During the month of August, some of you know I have what is called study time. Some of my colleagues use this time to plan out their sermons for the first half of the year and write some of them in advance. I find this utterly incomprehensible. It felt even more impossible than usual this fall. How can you plan for the unknown? But I do read as much as I can in August, and I choose books that I think might be helpful for the year ahead. And this past August, I reread The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings trilogy. It's really long. I'm a fast reader, but I only got to about the middle of book 3 before I had run out of time and also run out of renewals at the library, and I had to return it. I have to tell you, I felt a little silly devoting as much time to it as I did, and I also felt a little silly looking in the young adult section of the library for my professional development reading. And the first copy they gave me, the print was so tiny that I had to actually bring it back and ask for larger print. But I just felt compelled to read it. And I did because a couple of passages from those books were going around after the 2016 election. And I wanted to see where those passages came from. And I just thought that reading The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings would help me to help you if harder times befell. So there were 2 passages I wanted to find. And the first is from the first book in the trilogy, The Fellowship of the Ring, where the wizard Gandalf is explaining to Frodo, the hobbit, that Frodo is going to have to choose whether or not he will go on this seemingly impossible journey, a journey to destroy the one ring of power, unless the evil Lord Sauron and the gathering forces of darkness find the ring and harness its powers, and destruction is unleashed upon the Middle-earth. And Frodo, who is still young in hobbit years, says to Gandalf, "I wish this need not have happened in my time." And Gandalf answers, "So do I. And so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for us to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us." And later, when the adventure has gotten really dire, Frodo is exhausted and despondent, and he's almost lost the ring, and he's certain he can't do it. His faithful companion, Samwise, who is aptly named, gives him a little talk. And this passage is from the second book, The Two Towers. Frodo says, "I can't do this, Sam." And Sam answers, "I know. It's all wrong. By rights, we shouldn't even be here, but we are. It's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo. The ones that really mattered, they were full of danger. And sometimes you didn't want to know the end, because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad had happened? But in the end, it's a passing thing, this shadow. A new day will come. And when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer those were the stories that stayed with you, the stories that meant something, even if you were too small to understand why, but I think I do understand now. The folks in those stories had a lot of chances of turning back, only they didn't, because they were holding on to something. And Frodo asks wearily, "What are we holding on to, Sam?" And Sam answers that there's good in this world, and it is worth fighting for. As I said, I didn't get all the way through to the end, but I remember the story. Frodo carries the ring all the way to Mount Doom. He survives chapters and chapters worth of dangers, and he falters at the crucial moment, and he can't let go of the ring, but the story is bigger than Frodo, and it falls in anyway. The ring is destroyed, Sauron is defeated, the shadow passes, and the hobbits return to the Shire where they help restore the peace. But Frodo is not unchanged by what he has endured, and evil is not entirely or permanently vanquished from the world. And toward the end of the last book, Gandalf says, "Other evils there are that may come." And yet it is not our part to master all of the tides of the world, but to do what is in us for the help of those years wherein we are set. Uprooting the evil in the fields that we know, so that those who live after may have clean earth to till. The stories did help me because they reminded me that we cannot struggle alone, that the only way we can resist the shadows of our times is together, and that each one of us will need to decide what is ours to do, which fields are ours to till, and how will we tend to them. It's going to be hard, and at times it's going to be heartbreaking. And we will probably get very tired and lose our way more than once. And then we will need to be Samwise for one another and remind each other that the good in this world is worth fighting for. And we don't need to know what our work is at this moment. Maybe we just need to feel. And I know we feel a lot of things which change by the day and sometimes by the hour. I know that some of you feel betrayed, and some are stunned, and some are not surprised at all, which doesn't seem to make it any easier. And some of us are despairing, and some are enraged, and some are truly scared of what is to come. It's all part of grief. And grief is the human response to loss. We are grieving because we have lost things that matter deeply to us, or we are afraid, with good reason, that we will. I also know that for some of us, grief turns pretty quickly to anger. And in anger, we are tempted to blame each other. It was the third-party voters. It was the ineptness of the Democratic Party. But blame doesn't help, especially when we turn it toward each other. Just feel the anger, if that is what you feel. and try to be gentle with yourself and with those around you who are grieving differently. I don't tend to go in the direction of anger myself. Instead, I go right to the land of dread and doom. I spin out worst-case scenarios. I rehearse the suffering for what may or may not actually happen, and facts do not comfort me in the slightest, which my husband will confirm. I have learned that hot tea, funny television, chocolate, and just saying it out loud, all the things I'm afraid, it'll help it to pass. My husband confirms this too. I also find it helps to remember that I grieve because I care, and that is true for all of us. We grieve because we love. And I think what will help us to get through the years ahead of us is to get as clear as we can about what we love. Under the rage and the sorrow and the fear is the love. Maybe we can think of that love as our commitment to the future, as our deepest yes. What are we willing to say yes to? Who are we going to protect? What are we going to work for? Where will we devote our energy, our resources, our time? But again, that is not work for today. Today we need to remember some simple things. We are going to help each other through this. And we are going to hold hope for one another. We just have to take turns so that not all of us lose our hope on the same day. We're going to help each other remember that this is still our country too. And we have a responsibility to it, to keep on trying to be a blessing to this world. We're going to help those who are hurting in whatever ways we can find to do it. And we are going to stay connected to and be guided by the deepest values of our faith: justice, inclusion, generosity, and love. Not as a feeling, but as action. Love as commitment, love as choice. In a letter from our denomination's leadership this week, this is how they put it. Love at the center of our faith is our greatest balm, our strongest shield, and our fiercest power. That animating core of love will demand both our action and offer us the wellspring of courage and hope that we need for the times ahead. So I'm holding on to this, and I hope you will too. But for all of this to work, you need to keep showing up, especially when you feel bad. Because the work and the hope and the strength of community is not a one-time thing. You need more than one Sunday morning dose, and we need you too. So you need to come back. Stephen Garnaas Holmes reminds us that the mending of the world is threaded with simple kindness and courage. I know that every single one of us has that in us, the capacity to be kind and brave. You are excellent at kind and brave. I know this because I've been watching you for 2.5 decades. So your spiritual homework for this week is to be as kind and brave as you can, as often as you can. It is to think about the strength of those thousands and thousands of tiny stitches, tiny acts of goodness and courage, mending this torn fabric. In 1860, on the very brink of the Civil War, this is what the poet Emily Dickinson wrote from her home in the Berkshire Hills. This world is just a little place, just the red in the sky before the sun rises. So let us keep fast hold of one another's hands, that when the birds begin, none of us will be missing.